It bears an image on it, ventral, front, and back dorsal, of a human figure.
It shows a very faint sort of image of a crucified man. And the crucified man calls us to remember Jesus' death and resurrection.
In a dimly lit laboratory, rows of quantum computers hum in unison, analyzing terabytes of data from an artifact that has baffled historians for centuries, a 2,000-year-old piece of weathered parchment. Patterns emerge where none were thought to exist. Suddenly, the system freezes. It has detected a hidden structure, a perfectly repeating geometrical imprint invisible to the naked eye. This isn't mere wear and tear. It's encoded information. Now, mathematicians and physicists are facing a chilling possibility. Could this ancient relic be hiding evidence of a phenomenon so powerful, so inexplicable, that modern science has no legal framework to explain it? It wasn't paint. It was data. For years, the narrative was simple. This 14-foot-long cloth was a medieval hoax, a clever painting made to fool the masses. But here's the catch. When the AI analyzed the chaotic fibers of the linen, it stopped. It detected a signal. Beneath the faint, haunting image of the man, the computer found a repeating mathematical symmetry. This is a pattern that no medieval artist could have created. In fact, no known natural process can explain it. Basically, the AI found a digital ghost locked in the threads. To understand why this is such a game-changer, you have to look at the details. The image on the shroud is unbelievably superficial. It rests only on the very topmost microfibers of the linen threads. We are talking about a depth of just a few hundred nanometers. To put that in perspective, a single human hair is about 80,000 nanometers thick. This image is thinner than a soap bubble. The color doesn't soak into the cloth like paint, dye, or ink would. If you slice a thread crosswise, the center is white. The image sits on top like a scorch mark. There are no brush strokes. There is no directionality. It's more like the fibers themselves were chemically altered by a rapid burst of energy. When the AI looked at this, it didn't see art. It saw a data set. The neural networks performed a technique called principal component analysis. This is a fancy way of stripping away noise to find the core truth. What emerged was a field of information. The brightness and darkness of the image followed a precise, predictable rule, almost like a physical law of distance. Imagine a cloth being draped over a body. If you were to paint that, you would use shading to trick the eye. But the shroud doesn't use shading. The AI confirmed that the intensity of the image corresponds perfectly to the distance between the cloth and the body. The closer the cloth was to the skin, the darker the image. The farther away, the lighter. It's a perfect mathematical map. It gets crazier. The AI detected faint, repeating symmetries and ratios throughout the body. Think of it like a musical harmony, but for your eyes. The distance between the eyes, the proportions of the hands, the curvature of the ribs, all obey an underlying geometric scaffolding. These patterns were invisible to the human eye for centuries, buried in the visual noise of the fabric's weave, but the AI saw them clearly. This suggests the image wasn't created by a human hand touching the cloth. A forger in the Middle Ages would have needed to be a master physicist, a mathematician, and a nanotechnologist to pull this off. They would have had to paint with invisible geometry. The AI essentially proved that the image behaves less like a drawing and more like a projection. Scientists are now faced with a mind-bending reality. The world's most famous relic might be a highly advanced piece of information technology, created by a process we still don't understand. The AI didn't end the age argument. It simply made it pointless. Because even if this fabric truly dates back to the Middle Ages, how did anyone embed three-dimensional information into simple linen threads. It's like uncovering a QR code hidden inside a painting from the 1400s. It just shouldn't exist. The AI has shown that the shroud isn't merely an image. It's a record holding confirmed data that we're only now gaining the ability to interpret. But it goes even further. The AI also examined the noise surrounding the body. In fake works, the background is usually blank or crudely filled in. On the shroud, the AI discovered the background holds data silence. That means the image formation was selective. Whatever produced the image only interacted with the cloth where the body existed. And it did so with extreme collimation, meaning the energy beams were perfectly parallel, something we can only accomplish today using lasers. If you shine a flashlight at a wall, the beam spreads. It becomes blurry. The shroud image doesn't blur. It stays razor-sharp down to the microscopic scale. This suggests the light or energy responsible for the image didn't disperse. It traveled in straight lines, violating the inverse square law of physics. The AI marked this as a physical irregularity, so we're observing a cloth that appears to have recorded an instant when the laws of physics were briefly suspended. The machine didn't just detect a pattern, it uncovered a map pointing toward something far darker that challenges the laws of thermodynamics, the map concealed within the scorch. So here's the thing. To truly understand why this AI finding is unsettling so many people, we need to revisit the technology that came before it. The shroud has always carried bizarre details that simply refuse to make sense. Let's rewind to 1898. A lawyer named Sacco di Pia captures the very first photograph of the shroud. He's inside his darkroom developing the glass plate. He studies the negative and nearly drops it. In the negative, the faint, blurry figure on the cloth suddenly turns into a sharp, clear, positive portrait. The image on the cloth was, effectively, a photographic negative long before photography even existed. That detail alone should make anyone stop and think. How do you paint a negative when the idea of a negative hasn't been invented? A medieval artist paints what they observe. They don't paint reversed light values of a face so that 500 years later, a camera can reveal the real image. That would be like composing a book in binary code in the year 1300. But that was only the beginning. Jump ahead to the 1970s. A group of scientists from the Air Force Academy chose to process a photo of the shroud using a VP-8 image analyzer. This wasn't a gimmick. It was hardware NASA used to chart the surface of the Moon and Mars. It converts brightness into height. If you feed a normal photograph of a person, even a high-quality one, into a VP-8, the output is chaos. The nose collapses inward, the eyes bulge outward. It looks warped. That's because, in photographs, light comes from the sun or lamps, creating shadows unrelated to depth. A shadow beneath a nose darkens the area, which the machine reads as depth. But when the shroud image was processed through the VP-8, it didn't warp. It produced a flawless, undistorted three-dimensional relief of a human form. The scientists were shocked. The image contained precise three-dimensional data. The darker regions were physically closer to the cloth, while the lighter areas were farther away. This is the mystery scientists have wrestled with for decades. A medieval dated object containing what appears to be advanced technology embedded within the fabric. It's a complete contradiction. And this is where the AI returns. The AI didn't merely validate the VP-8 findings, it sharpened them. The neural network removed the interference from the cloth weave and the burn damage from the fire of 1532. What remained was a topographic map of a human body that is anatomically perfect. The wild part is that the data indicates the body passes through the cloth. Let me break it down. The image matches a concept known as volumetric projection. It's as though the body emitted light for a brief instant, and that energy traveled through the linen, leaving behind a scorch that captured distance. The AI discovered that this scorch is even and consistent. It doesn't sink into the fibers. It rests on the surface. If an artist had painted it, the pigment would have soaked in. If a forger used a heated statue, the heat would have burned through and spread outward. But this image is exact, vertical, and incredibly detailed. The AI analysis indicates that whatever created the image moved in straight lines, completely unaffected by gravity. On top of that, the AI uncovered something about the coins. You may have heard this strange claim before. Some researchers suggested there are faint impressions of Roman coins, specifically Pontius Pilate leptons, placed over the eyes. For years, this idea was argued over. The AI enhanced the contrast around the eye sockets and detected circular distortions that match the size and shape of those coins. If this holds true, it dates the shroud very narrowly to around 29 AD to 36 AD. A medieval forger wouldn't know to place rare first-century coins on the eyes, nor could they paint them so subtly that they only appear with 21st-century computer processing. The AI also examined the blood. And here's the shocker. It isn't paint. It's real human blood, type AB. But the strange part is its condition. The AI's color spectrum analysis shows the blood is still red. Normally, blood darkens to brown or black over time due to oxidation. The fact that it remains red suggests extremely high levels of bilirubin, a substance the body releases during severe trauma and torture. Even more important, the blood was already on the cloth before the image formed. The AI can see that there is no image beneath the bloodstains. This means the blood soaked into the fabric first, and then the burst occurred. If this were a painting, the artist would have needed to paint the blood first, then carefully paint the negative image around it without touching it. That's mechanically impossible for a human hand. The AI has essentially demolished the painting explanation. It just doesn't match the evidence. What we're seeing is a cloth that behaves more like photographic film, exposed to a form of radiation we don't normally find in nature. The implications are enormous. If this is a recording of an event, then something physically happened to that body that released an immense amount of energy. The AI is detecting the leftover trace of that energy. The timeline was on the verge of collapsing because the cloth concealed a hidden section that misled the world. And this is why the textbooks were wrong. Most people believed the mystery ended in 1988. That was the year science was said to have driven a stake through the heart of the debate. 3 independent labs, Oxford, Zurich, and Arizona, performed radiocarbon dating on a sample of the shroud. The method, known as accelerator mass spectrometry, counts individual carbon-14 atoms to determine age. It's extremely accurate. The labs returned a date range of 1260 to 1390 AD. Headlines declared fake. The shroud was medieval. Case closed. But almost right away, the situation started to unravel, and that's an understatement. The sample they tested was flawed. Researchers cut a small piece from one corner of the shroud to reduce damage. But think about what that corner endured. For centuries, the cloth was displayed by its corners. Countless hands touched it. It absorbed smoke, candle residue, and sweat. Most critically, the shroud survived a major fire in 1532. Nuns repaired the damaged sections and stitched the shroud onto a new backing cloth. They used a method called invisible reweaving, a technique so precise that the new threads are indistinguishable from the original ones to the naked eye. A chemist named Raymond Rogers, who worked with the original research team, chose to examine the leftover threads from the 1988 sample. What he observed under the microscope was astonishing. The fibers taken from that corner sample were chemically different from the rest of the shroud. Those threads were coated with a plant-based gum and woven together with cotton. The main body of the shroud is made of pure linen. There is no cotton present in the primary cloth. He also detected traces of dye used to blend the newer threads with the older fabric. His conclusion was explosive. The laboratories didn't date the shroud itself. They dated a medieval repair patch. It's like trying to determine the age of the Great Pyramid by testing a Starbucks cup left behind by a tourist on the steps. Naturally, you'd get a modern date. This discovery threw the entire carbon dating result into doubt. More recently, newer technology stepped in to close the gap. Scientists applied wide-angle X-ray scattering to examine the structural breakdown of the flax cellulose in the linen. Unlike carbon-14 testing, this technique isn't influenced by dirt or newer threads. It measures how the atoms inside the flax have degraded over time. The results were startling. The level of decay in the shroud's linen matches fabrics recovered from Masada, Israel, dated between 55 and 74 AD. Another study using vibrational spectroscopy reached the same conclusion. The cloth is approximately 2,000 years old. So this is where things stand. We have a disputed carbon-14 test from a contaminated corner suggesting a medieval origin, and we have several advanced modern tests pointing to the 1st century. But the AI adds yet another layer. It cross-referenced the shroud with another artifact, the Sudarium of Oviedo. This smaller cloth, kept in Spain, is believed to be the face covering placed over Jesus' head immediately after death, before the body was wrapped in the shroud. The Sudarium has a documented history dating back to the 7th century, long before the supposed medieval forgery time frame of the shroud. The AI compared the blood stains on the Sudarium with those on the shroud. The match was exact. The blood type is identical. The stain patterns line up geometrically when the Sudarium is placed over the shroud's face. This strongly suggests both cloths covered the same face at the same moment. If the Sudarium predates the Middle Ages, then the shroud must as well. So even if someone still insists on a medieval date, they face a much bigger problem. They must explain how a medieval forger, working from a castle somewhere, managed to produce a nanoscale image containing embedded three-dimensional topographic data that perfectly matches the atomic aging of ancient linen and aligns flawlessly with a separate cloth preserved in Spain. That scenario simply isn't believable. The forgery theory requires the forger to be a time traveler armed with laser technology and advanced forensic knowledge. The AI cut through the political controversy surrounding carbon dating and went straight to the physics. And the physics are telling us this object doesn't behave like a painting or a rubbing. It behaves like a witness to an event. Scientists are now approaching the shroud not as a religious symbol, but as a crime scene. And the evidence left behind is pointing to a cause of death. Or more precisely, a cause of the image. That outcome should be impossible. If it wasn't painted, then something turned that body into an intense burst of light. When matter becomes light, we can rule out paint. We can rule out chemicals. We can rule out heat rubbing. So what remains? How do you form a shallow, three-dimensional encoded negative image on linen without damaging the fabric? This is where the science gets truly strange. We're stepping into the realm of extreme theories, but remember, these ideas are grounded in the solid data the AI just delivered. The strongest scientific explanation right now involves something called vacuum ultraviolet radiation. Scientists at Italy's ENEA Research Center spent years attempting to recreate the shroud's image. They fired excimer lasers at linen cloth and discovered that a very specific, short-wavelength ultraviolet light could color the linen exactly like the shroud. It affects only the outermost surface, roughly 200 nanometers deep, without scorching the cloth beneath. But here's the problem. To imprint that image across a full human-sized sheet, it would require a burst of radiation equal to 34 trillion watts of vacuum UV light. To put that into perspective, that's more power than any searchlight ever built. It rivals a nuclear-scale event, but without the heat. It's an energy pulse lasting less than 40 billionths of a second. Any longer, and the cloth would have vanished. Any weaker, and the image wouldn't exist. It had to be exact. So here's the radical theory the AI data seems to support. The body in the shroud didn't simply decay. It dematerialized. Some physicists propose what's known as collapsed state theory. They suggest the body went through a process where its mass converted directly into energy. Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared, tells us that even a tiny amount of mass holds an enormous amount of energy. If the atoms of a human body suddenly transformed or decayed, they would release an intense burst of radiation. The AI found the image is orthographic. That means the radiation traveled perfectly straight, vertically, ignoring gravity. It didn't explode outward in all directions. This points to a controlled phenomenon. Think of an event horizon, the boundary around a black hole. But instead of gravity, this was a biological event horizon. The body reached a critical point and shifted phase. Share your thoughts with me below. And if you want to continue exploring the unknown, hit the like button and subscribe to see more videos just like this.